And of course, we do know International Women's Day is a time to reflect on progress made, to call for change and to celebrate acts of courage and determination by ordinary women who have played an extraordinary role in the history of their countries and communities. This year's International Women's Day come on the heels of unprecedented global event movements for women's rights, equality and justice. This has taken the form of global marches and campaigns, including #MeToo and #TimesUp in the United States and America, I should say, and their counterparts in other countries on issues ranging from sexual harassment and femicide to equal pay and women's political representation. Now, gender equality is not only a fundamental human right, but a necessary foundation for a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. And of course, I want to introduce our guest this morning who will take us through this particular discussion here in the market today, where we're turning our focus on the International Women's Day. And of course, we know Halima has just told us the hashtag is Press for Progress, and we want to see how far that mile has been made as far as the progress within women or gender equality is concerned as well. So I want to introduce our panelists this morning. We have with us Honorable Safina Kwekwe. She's the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender. Also, we do have with us this morning Dinah Musindarwezo. She is Executive Director of African Women's Development Network, that is a FEMNET. We have with us as well Muriithi Ndegwa. He's Executive Director of Kenya Institute of Management, and Nuru Mugambi. She's a director at Kenya Bankers Association. Also, we do have with us as well Mary Mukindia. She's an executive leadership coach and oil and gas expert. Good morning, gentlemen. Gentlemen and ladies. I've been taught. Yeah, so my tongue is so used to men. Yes. Today now, but I want just to introduce you and welcome you, of course, here this morning. It's a big day for women, and we celebrate you on what you've done, of course, for this country and the entire world. So we've known that, yes, pressing for progress is what this International Women's Day is a theme that is running, and we just want to hear from you this morning. What is your view about the progress we've made so far? We have also a bill that is coming up that I'll let you know about it, that they want to increase the number of MPs so that they can accommodate women. Has the two-thirds gender rule really worked in this country? Let's just begin, first of all, with you, Honorable Safina.
Thank you very much, Debarl. And let me first start by saying that the progress made thus far, globally and in Kenya, is something that we need to celebrate. And also to note that we still have a long way to go, and therefore that's why we need to still press for more efforts, for more interventions. But so far, we have a reason to celebrate. We have come from far. With more efforts, coordinated more efforts, we can be able to bridge the gap sooner than later if we so put enough effort. Right.
So does the government have anything up its collective sleeves as far as this day is concerned? Have you prepared anything?
Yes, indeed. Today we celebrate the International Women's Day by celebrating Beyond Zero as one of the initiatives that has truly made a mark on the lives of women and children. We will be marking this day by celebrating the progress made thus far, and also launching the second strategic plan for Beyond Zero. And counties are also holding their own editions. Yes. So everywhere today there will be some activity ongoing on women's celebration of women's progress and gender equality. So it's a day to celebrate. Right.
Well, it seems that we are celebrating also Beyond Zero, but I just want also to highlight something that we saw yesterday, on just as a side by story on the front page of the Standard, that 16-hour search for where to deliver via CS. This is a mother, and we're talking about resilience. A mother's agonizing trip to 3 hospitals for a cesarean section delivery is frustrated by absent doctors, missing theater equipment, and power outage. And of course, when we're talking about Beyond Zero, what is really happening with the counties as far as that initiative is concerned?
These are some of the things that give us a reason to say why we need to press for progress. That indeed there has been efforts and there have been interventions to ensure safe motherhood. But we still have challenges of equipment, of specialized care in our hospitals, and therefore The county governments that indeed are custodians of the health services as per the Constitution, they also have challenges that they must deliberately address, so that we don't see any mother having to go through several service providers just to get to deliver a child. These are some of the things that we say, the more reason today we are saying we need to still to do more. And that's why the theme is press for progress. We have done much, but we are not there yet.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's hear from Dinah. Good morning, Dinah.
Morning.
Yes. Press for progress, I should say. Yeah. What is your thoughts about it today?
Today I'm very happy, and I want to wish all the listeners a happy International Women's Day. I celebrate especially women that have been pressing for change, women activists from different corners of the society, especially in rural areas, because they work in really difficult circumstances. But yet we have seen that every change that we celebrate today, whether it is in policy and the legal frameworks, which I see that we have made really progress in Africa as a continent, but also in different African countries where we have progressive constitution that recognize women and men as equal citizens. And behind all this progress, there has been women pushing for this progress, pushing hard and long to ensure that there is transformation of the lives of women and girls, and I celebrate those women today.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from also Muriithi Ndegwa. He's the only thorn, you know, on this stock of roses that we have here.
Thank you very much, Debarl. I think the first and foremost thing is, let me confirm that I'm a man. And let me also hasten to add that in our perspective as Kenya Institute of Management, we believe that any conversation about gender equality needs to take cognizance of the fact that there is no gender equality that can be achieved without bringing men on board.
Yes.
And why do I say this? From our perspective, we've done some researches, especially in the corporate world, as KIM, to look at the board diversity from way back 2012 to 2015 and to 2017. And we've been able to track the movement, and we've also been able to track the progression of representation of women in the boards. Besides that, we would also like to say that it's not just a question of whether it is morally right or whether it's a constitutional right, but I think from our perspective, we've also been able to demonstrate that the more inclusivity you bring in terms of diversity, whether it's in terms of gender, in terms of age, it results in increased performance and improved performance of the institute and the corporation. And this therefore means that as an institute, we also are at the forefront in terms of supporting the gender parity issue, and also in supporting women to rise up the ranks so that in the C-suite we can have more women. And this is the reason why I actually come to support the International Women's Day. There's a lot we'll be sharing also in terms of the research that we've done, the global perspective, and also the UN initiative that was done in 2015, He for She. There's no reason why that would have been done, or the UN would have come up with such a program, unless there's a recognition that men also need to be in the forefront in supporting women as far as gender equality is concerned. And so for us, we'll say that if progress on gender equality is to be made, conversations have to be continuous around the issue, and men have to take the forefront or the lead.
All right. Let's hear from Nuru. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My perspective is that women play a material role in the economy. And if you look at the women's economy, it accounts for about $20 trillion of purchasing power. And I think those numbers are too loud to be ignored. So women have a significant role in the sustainable development story. They have a significant role that they play in driving economic development globally as well as at the national level. So indeed, as my sisters and Mr. Ndegwa have shared, we have seen progress, but possibly not as far as we would like to go. If you look at the political arena that you mentioned, we've only had 5 female presidents. If you look at in Kenya, elected leaders, we have only had 16. percent of our parliament being elected females. So I think there's still a lot of work left, but we have seen some progress. My perspective in the banking industry, when I hear the history of where we have come from, where women were not allowed to borrow without a letter from their husband, or they were not allowed to open accounts unless their husband was there. So you wonder, for women like me without husbands, what happens? So I think, but now fast forward to today, where you see so many banks competing for women customers, launching products tailored exclusively for women, you see women leading banks. So I think we've come from far, but yet we're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Mary. Good morning.
Morning. I think I'd like to twist it a little bit because I don't like the word progress, though I understand how it's used. I think it's very much a question of recognition. Because when you look at women and what you said, and you had a wonderful story about, you know, women and mothers. First of all, our major contribution is birthing a nation. We birth people. We are the basic contribution to human life. That's our role, and that's a major role. The next one is that we are partners, equal partners. Many households all over the world, all over Kenya, we're recognized, men recognize us as equal partners. We work as hard, we till the land, we farm, we work. Many of us are single mothers, but we have a huge contribution that we make. If you go to maybe like something like a profession like teaching, majority at women, teachers, teaching the next generation. If you go to customers, more than 50% of the purchasing power and the buying decision is made by women. No man will tell you buy a house without his wife. We're the ones who buy the household goods. We're the ones who have the purchasing power. We're the ones who buy the food, the clothing. We determine the schools. We help in that decision. Our power is more than 50%. So we're major customers. But when you go into the managers, into the leadership, that's where our recognition is not met. Is not equal to what we give. So for me, it's not so much progress. We already know. Men already know, and I like what Mr. Ndegwa says. We're you know, men are part of the equation. We already know, but are we recognized when it comes to that apex, the leadership position? Are women recognized for the huge contribution that they make at every stage of life? More than their share at times. That is, for me, is probably the point should be pressed for recognition, not so much for progress.
Yes.
We say, what progress have women made? We've always been there. We're a fundamental part of human life. It's 50-50. So for me, it's so much what progress have we made in recognizing the contribution that we make at every sphere of life, and say, hey, it's time you came to the apex of leadership because you are a partner, a real partner. And for me, that's what's important. And days like this are good because it just focuses again that you're not being given your due recognition that you should have.
Right, so you say that, yeah, we come to the apex of leadership, it's time, but new research shows that after making big strides also in the 1980s and 1990s, the number of women also breaking into the top 1% of earners also has stalled as well. What could be the reason of this? We think that you're making progress, but it seems also now that has tapered off, you know, over the years. Let's say from Safina.
I think I still believe that the journey has not been smooth. The momentum has not been steady. We've had interventions that at one time were on high gear, and then depending on the circumstances at that time they went on low gear. And I think that's where we've had this fluctuation, where we have at one time we say we are almost there, and then come the next cycle, we renegade back. But the bottom line is that the fire is still burning, that we still need to work harder towards achieving gender parity, gender equality, and women empowerment. Those are the two, can I say, buzzwords? Yes. Gender equality and women empowerment. So we were doing badly in the 80s. Then there was a awakening in the 90s with the Beijing platform and all that. Then it's like it became like a fad. But then I think we became complacent along the way. Yeah, we come the 2010 Constitution, immense progression that is articulated in the Constitution. The challenge becomes the implementation. But I see that the goodwill, both in men and women, boys and girls, is there for us to change, because we are saying we are not okay as a Kenyan society. We are not okay as a globe. So we need to change, and that realization and that appreciation and the momentum that is being built around that is what, for me, I say is an encouragement and a motivation.
Okay, maybe if we come to you, Dinah, of course you from Rwanda, and we know Rwanda has actually made a very good progress when it comes to women representation also in parliament. Rwandan women gently shattering the glass ceiling, it says here. We want to know, what can we learn from Rwanda that we're not actually doing in Kenya and the entire Africa, right? 50% of, the cabinet's representation, that is female, right? Which is a good stride as far as also leading this continent and showing that, yes, we need to enroll women also as far as leadership is concerned. Tell us, what is the secret? I mean, is the president who is actually proffering this and encouraging this, or we have more aggressive women in Rwanda than Kenya and maybe Tanzania or Uganda?
So just to note that at the core of advancing gender equality and women's rights is power. It is also the systematic issues. And with that comes in terms of ensuring that every time you push for change, there is resistance because you are destabilizing the status quo. So much as there are women, there are government that are progressive and pushing for change, there is also a group of people that are pushing against that because they are enjoying the status quo as it is today. And so that's where you see sometimes you make some steps forward and you make some steps backwards because there is also power that is pushing against that. But coming back to my country, Rwanda, and the progress that has been made, especially in political leadership, there are two factors that I see that can be attributed to that. One is the political will at the highest leadership. The president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, is a firm and open supporter of women's leadership. During the struggle that ended genocide in 1994 in Rwanda, it was very clear that women played a key role during the struggle, as people on the front line fighting for liberation, but also as health carers, as mobilizers. And much as in many countries, women play that role in the struggle, in liberations, and often they are forgotten immediately. The war has ended. In Rwanda, it was different. In Rwanda, the leadership continued to say that if you continue to engage women and actually ensure that you utilize their potential, then you achieve progress. I mean, immediately after the genocide, the population of women was 70%.
Yes.
So definitely the country wasn't going to depend on 30%. So there was that recognition that you have to tap into women's potential and power to be able to achieve economic development, economic growth. But also the other second factor is the women's movement. The women's movement in Rwanda was very strong. They pressed for change. They advocated for the reform of the constitution that provided for gender equality. We see reform of constitutions in different countries that definitely provide for gender equality, but when it comes to implementation, it becomes a problem. In Rwanda, it was different because we had the strong women's movement pressing for change in policy change and providing for equal representation of women, and that was matched by the political will to implement and see that being put into practice. And for me, I think that is what brought about the change that we saw in Rwanda and we continue to enjoy today.
All right, so you've been here in the country, I think, for the last 6 good years. And comparing Kenya and Rwanda, where are we missing the mark? Is it the political will that you're talking about also? When it comes also to women movement in this country, do you find them to be robust? Or we need to, up the ante a bit? When it comes also to policy change, are we also aggressive on that note? What do you think?
Yeah.
Without being diplomatic,
So in Kenya, definitely there is progress in terms of the constitution of Kenya. It
Yes.
is one of the most progressive constitution I have read,
Yes.
not just in Africa, but globally. And so in terms of policy change, I see that the constitution provides that. And the constitution didn't just pass because of goodwill. It was also because the women's movement in this country played a key role in pushing for progressive provision in the constitution. So by the fact that the women's movement was really active and mobilized around the constitution and has mobilized around so many things. So I admire the women's movement in this country. It is strong, it's robust, it is committed to the cause. But what I see lacking in this country,
Yes.
that of course Kenya can borrow from Rwanda, is political will.
Political will.
It's the political will by the fact that a president of a nation appoints his cabinet twice and sees it not fit to at least respect the constitution. So if the president himself is not respecting the constitution, of course, who else is going to respect the constitution?
Good question.
Because as leaders, we inspire others, we lead by examples, and when we fail to do that, then we have failed the nation. We have definitely failed half of the population, or more than half of the population, which is women. And so for me, until the president of Kenya shows the political will and the commitment to gender equality, it will be really difficult to achieve gender equality in this country.
Right, and you raise a good question, and I think we'll put that question to Muriithi Ndegwa. If the president is not willing actually to implement the constitution, who will? This is what Dinah is asking from Rwanda. A powerful question.
Well, I think it's a difficult question for me to answer because for me, my area and my territory is in the corporate sector. And I think it's also important not to say that we've not done much because like I said, we've been tracking the movement as far as women representation is concerned in the boards. And if we look at if we compare Kenya and other countries in the world, certainly we can say that there's quite some progress that has been made. For example, if you look at the research that we did in 2012,
Yes.
only 12% representation as far as women is concerned in the boards. But coming back to 2015,
Yes.
the position had increased to about 18%. Last year, in conjunction with the Nairobi Securities Exchange, Great Kambashel Foundation, represented in Kenya by New Voices, New Faces, Nuru Mugambi's institute, we actually were able to establish that the representation is now at 21%. That for me is quite some progressive movement from 2012 all the way to 2017 because you're moving from 12% to 21%.
Yes.
And if you look at the global perspective, really, we are saying that 1 out of every 5 people in the board is a woman. Now, that may not look too good, but if you compare with the global perspective, in South America, the research indicated that it's about 8%. In Asia, it's about 13%.
Right.
So really, we also need to look at things in perspective where we are, the context in Kenya, against other parts of Africa and also other parts of the world.
Yeah, we will come to board diversity much later. But now if we are actually to ride on the political wheel, because this is where we are, because it begins there. As much as now we'll have the board diversity and inclusion, and on top there, then it's not really working. I think also that will really like scuttle the whole process along the way, right? We can hear from also Nuru on that political wheel that Dinah is raising, also on the policy changes and women movement in this country. Maendeleo wanawake et al. So do you think they've been able actually to press for progress as far as the women representation is concerned?
I tend to agree with Dinah's view that getting women to be represented in elected office and also appointed office like the cabinet secretaries, it starts from the top. And if you follow through the challenges that women face, and I'm sure Madam PS can attest to this, when you follow the challenges that women face in politics, even to get the resources to run a campaign to be elected is very difficult. And for you to be one of the front runners of your party, you have to be endorsed by the leadership. So indeed, if you look at the Jubilee party, if you look at the ODM party, those two parties have a critical role to play to sponsor and support women, even at the constituency level, so they can have a chance to run for elected office. I think a lot of people always say, well, women, you guys don't, or you women, you don't vote for your own. But first of all, how many women get to the ballot in the first place? So that's where it comes down to that buy-in and support at the top. I think it makes a big difference.
But of course, looking at the past election, we've made a significant progress as far as women, you know, being elected is concerned. 3 governors, also the senators that we do have has increased exponentially. I think it's a good progress. I don't know what you reckon, Mary.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And I say, you know what, leaders can only lead their people. You can't run so ahead of your people that you end up leading yourself and they're not followers. So in a sense, though we say you're leaders, you're also trying to pull and bring your people with you. The Rwanda situation was as a result of certain dynamics that happen in that society. And as Dinah has said, they ended up with 70% women. They literally had no choice. We have not had that unfortunate occurrence. So you move with what your people have. And you, as a leader, you push your people, but you bring them with you and have social education and bring them around with you. So let's talk about the politics. Your own newspaper today is saying that women accounted for 16% of the 2017 election aspirants. That is the social situation. Leaders operate within the social context. But if you look at the cabinet, it's 27%. Which of the cabinet is women. That means the leader is moving a little bit, quite ahead, 10 percentage points, 11 percentage points of the population. But you can't say I'm going to appoint 50% women when the population and the social context does not allow you to. The government, if you look at board directors, and I don't want to make the case for government, but I've been there and I've been doing a lot of studies, you will see that in the parastatal sector, in the government sector, women in terms of the numbers, and particularly when you look at the pipeline, you're looking at the junior, middle level, and the senior manager, because that's where the pipeline of women leaders will come from. They're way ahead of the private sector. And Africa, as Mr. Ndegwa said, and otherwise, is way ahead even of America in terms of our recognition of women to put them in leadership. So I say we've made substantial recognition of our role as women. There's been recognition, and even our constitution is way ahead, but we cannot say the apex of everything comes from one person called the president. You have the parliament who vote their own committee chairs and everybody. You have the counties. You have the people themselves. Is a society ready to be socialized and to understand? And I do believe, yes, women have their part to play to say, I just want a token representation because I'm a woman. We have to come up with lists. Who are the qualified women? Who are the women with, degrees in engineering, chief managers, such and such, and they're there. But we need to do more of our work to say, here we are. Don't say where are the women. Here are the lists. These are the most qualified women. These are the most qualified in health. These are the more qualified in engineering. These are directors. Because sometimes people call me and they say, we need a woman. Because sometimes we don't have that knowledge. And it's for us to put up our knowledge and say, we are here. And this is who we are. So people can say, oops, okay, you're there. Give me 5 people. And it's really, the society is part of that movement. And I say we've made tremendous leaps in recognition.
Right, welcome back. You're watching In the Market here on AM Live. Today we're turning our focus on the International Women's Day. The theme is Press for Progress, and I'm holding court this morning with Dinah Musindarwezo. She's the Executive Director of African Women Development Network, that is FEMNET. Also, we do have with us Honorable Safina Kwekwe. She is the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender. Also, we do have with us Muriithi Ndegwa. He's Executive Director of Kenya Institute of Management, KIMS. And also, we do have with us Nuru Mugambi, Director, Kenya Bankers Association. Also, she's the Vice Chair of New Faces, New Voices. This is a Pan-African network that advocates for women's economic empowerment. And we have as well with us Mary Mukindia, who is an executive leadership coach, also oil and gas expert. We're continuing with the conversation apace on the matters, all matters women today. And of course, we promise you when we circle back, we'll begin with Muriithi Ndegwa, who's training at the leash, to tell us something before we took a short break. I hope we've not lost your train of thought.
Not exactly. I think I was just picking up on what Mary Mukindia had said. And indeed, I wanted to confirm that I've read an article which was also published by Huffington Post of January 2018. And it was talking about the success in Rwanda in terms of women empowerment. I think it's the only country in the world that has representation by MPs, about 64%. Now, having looked at the Rwanda case, and I think that article is quite precise in terms of what exactly Dinah was saying, that the context in Rwanda is obviously different from our context here in Kenya. And I think we also need to be a bit alive to the fact that what she was saying in terms of cultural traits, in terms of societal expectations, these are some of the things that we can also not throw through the window. We also need to take cognizance of that, so that even as we are talking about gender parity, is it realistic at this point in time? Or are there challenges, are there issues that we need to address so that we can attain gender parity sooner than later?
And just to add on that, what we were discussing during the break, you see, the way the Western world and people measure GDP and employment and, you know, people at work or all those details, it's based on the formal sector. You don't even do the unemployed sector. And if you bring in the unemployed, the agricultural sector, you miss out of women's contribution. And I think Dinah was saying, women's, and I said at the beginning, women's primary role is to give birth to a nation. And then many of us want to bring up good citizens. That requires time and effort. That is not being measured as part of working, as part of GDP. There are countries now that have recognized you need to pay women for that work of staying home, for taking care of the children. When a woman decides, I'm going to quit my job because I want to bring up my children until they're 8 or 10 years or 6 years, that is contribution to the economy. Is that being measured? Is that being rewarded? And then I want to get back to the workforce. So that contribution and that part that the women's burden, even if we're both working at that leadership level, I'm the one who still got to know if there's sukuma at home, there's meat at home, has the maid cooked, has she washed, are the children done homework. I'm the one who have to do it. So I have a dual role that is much higher. And our culture is that it all falls on you. So how are we evolving to say, if I'm going to say, let's give women the chance, then let's also culturally adapt so that you recognize that she has a bigger role to play than just that office role. She has, you know, tasks to do and keep the home burning, because it's supposed to be socially, culturally, it's a women's job. And that's where a lot of these things start to hit the gray area. And you've got to say, how then do we support the woman to be able to move to that new position? Because IFC studies have shown, and other commercial studies, that it's actually, there's a business case for women being at work. They help make better decisions. They bring a far, just like diversity of tribes work, you bring a far better judgment on the table. We're consumers. We're the ones buying the goods, we're this. But how do we then support them? And you're now starting to see companies who want to bring creches at work, who have flexi hours, who say you can come in at this time, leave early at this time. So long as the work result is achieved and the impact, you don't have to say we stick on our time rota. So it's a little bit more deeper in trying to understand why we have not reached where we are, because you don't measure the huge bit that we do for society.
So, and just a point of correction.
Yes, please.
I don't think that the main role for women is giving birth. I don't think that each woman individual has a liberty to choose whether she wants to choose that as her main role in terms of the reproduction.
I actually think we can do both very well. That's why we're
or
women.
You can choose to do both.
You can multitask.
Yes. Or you can choose to focus on your career as your main role. So women have the liberty to choose, but we know that it's women majority that give birth to the future labor that our countries and economies need. And that role is invisible, is not recognized, is not rewarded. And yet we know without that role we wouldn't be here. We know we wouldn't have countries.
It's a pivotal role, because you know, you raise you're actually lifting a lid on a Pandora's box when we're talking about women and giving birth, because I think Kenya is trailing when it comes to East Africa as far as women who are giving birth. And most of them, they want actually to, you know, continue with your education after maybe graduating. You want to go for the postgraduate, you want to go for the masters, you want to do your PhD. And of course, that particular age bracket of women who are giving birth or younger is trailing. So if we look at Burundi, if we look at Tanzania and Uganda, Kenya, excuse me, is lagging behind. Very, you know, at the lowest ebb there. This is very pivotal when it comes now to a working nation, knowing that yes, we have also people who are retiring, who will take over. So I think also what Mary is raising is very critical as far as giving us, but how do we have an even keel?
Me and Mary, we do agree.
We do agree.
Yeah, we do agree. What I don't agree with is that the main role of women
Yes.
is to give birth. I don't agree with that.
So that is what the societal norm. Yeah, before we come to PS, let's hear from Nuru.
I think I also agree that I disagree with Mary, because if you look at where technology is going, this idea that the role of women is to give birth is going to go away. Children are being produced in test tubes. They're being raised in labs. So this idea...
But should we head there?
But we're going there. There are labs that are testing this. They've been testing this for years. So this idea that our value is tied...
Are we pushing an agenda which is, I don't know, is a new age agenda, so to speak, with the advent of technology? Now women, they want to keep fit and become the models that they are. They don't want to go through the cesarean section or the normal delivery. Now also we have an option of test tubes.
Wait,
yeah?
Men don't want to keep fit either? I don't understand. but actually, if I can just also add, I think in the workplace, there is a tax for this idea of giving birth. In studies in the US, women without children earn 96 cents to the dollar when compared to men. Women with children earn 76 cents to the dollar. So that means there's a penalty in terms of pay, and it contributes to that pay gap when you have children. So in the future, I'm just saying in the future, and it's coming, if you look at where artificial intelligence is going, if you look at where the robotic movement is going, if you look at where technology is going, soon enough, human beings might not necessarily have to give birth. Women don't have to give birth. That's where technology is going.
Right. Let's say from PS. PS, where we're headed to, I think also we need to add another office within your docket of artificial intelligence, on how we're going to handle this. It's going to be a critical component, right? Yes. But what do you have to say in light of what you're hearing this morning as far as technology is concerned, giving birth is concerned? We're lagging behind also in bearing children, yeah?
We want to work out.
This is the crux of the matter.
Yeah.
That we are running away from a reality by creating a new reality. Okay, the woman is the only person with an egg.
Yes.
You can't create an egg. It can only come from a woman, and that woman, there is a biological connection between a woman and a child.
Yes.
And yes, technology is good. Technology is welcome, but it should not disconnect a woman from an offspring, okay? So even when the child is produced in a test tube or in a lab, that child needs nurturing. That child will need upbringing, virtues to be implanted with that child. And somebody has to do that. And who will do it? It will be the mother. Even if the child came from a tube or a lab, somebody will have to ensure that that child grows up to be a responsible citizen, will have to have the virtues that they need to have integrity, etc., etc. All the good things. And the first person will be the woman, to be the first teacher, the first companion of that child. So why should they be penalized for that? By for example, if you say we are justifying that because if you have a child, then you get lower pay, and so you rather have not a child, have one produced for you in a test tube, so that you can have more pay. That in itself is running out from the reality. That should not be a penalty. In fact, it should be something that merits higher recognition, that I can do both. And the women of this world, not just Kenya, need to appreciate that we should not be looking for alternatives that kind of normalize situations or practices that discriminate against women. Because when we agree that, okay, let's not have children so that we can have better pay, we are normalizing discrimination. Okay, so that is, for me, that is a bone of contention that I personally believe should be addressed. Allow me to discuss a bit the issue of saying that women are their own enemies. That also
we will broach that subject.
Okay.
Yeah, but I want us just to hover around. Can we hear from Dinah, then we come to you?
Yes.
Mukindia. Let's hear from Dinah. As far as artificial intelligence is concerned, and the normal way of delivery, she really tries to run away from that fact that yes, artificial intelligence is here, but also she raises concerns. The way God has created the world, the woman, she's the soul bearer, a person who actually can deliver. if we run away from the normal delivery, what sort of children are we trying to raise if we have, you know, the test tips doing all the work for us? Yeah, will they have the cognitive skills that we still now, as compared to a person who's gone through the normal delivery? Because there is a way that God has created a woman that also the labor pains and the pangs that you go through, they have a key pivotal role, you know, in the wholeness of that particular child, that the baby that is coming, you know, from the womb of a mother, right? So if we take them to the test tubes, and here, this is where we're headed if we don't take care. And looking at what we have as statistics in East Africa, where our women are not bearing children here in the country, maybe that will be another option. Samantha, she's here. Samantha, the toy is
Sophia.
here.
Sophia is here.
And Sophia is here as well.
So I think you can see...
Sophia is better.
I think even from this conversation, you can see the gender inequalities. The fact that if you touch on a woman's choice, that causes controversy immediately. So we embrace technology in so many things to make our work easier. You know, when computers came, we stopped using the typewriter and our work became easier. But when it comes to anything that is facilitating a woman's choice, then there is a lot of resistance, and that's what I'm saying even in this discussion. So of course, majority of women are continuing to give birth, being pregnant and giving birth, you know, the normal delivery. But also, I mean, there's this section which make the pain easier. It doesn't mean that a woman has to go through all the pain to give birth, or that if a woman chooses to use the tube to have a child or to adopt, that choice should be denied or questioned. I believe in a woman's choice to decide which ways to give birth, or if she wants to have children at all, you know. So we have to respect that choice. That choice is very, very important. But also, really, the question here is not about whether women give birth and which method they use. The question is that should not be used as a way to discriminate against women. In fact, we should create a conducive environment that will allow women to make different choices that they want to make. If I want to give birth to one child and still maintain my job, and still I want an environment that is going to allow me to thrive, be on top leadership if that's what I want. I want an environment that's going to make sure that I'm not paid less simply because there's a perception that if I'm taking off maternity leave, I'm not at the same level as a man who is not going to take maternity leave, you know. So it's creating an environment, systems that allow women to exercise their choices and also not be I like the PS's point about not penalizing women for giving birth, because if you do that, and that's what societies are doing, they are not recognizing that role, yet we can see the protest here in the room, that role is extremely important. That's why there's a protest, and they want women to go through the pain, the 9 months, and give birth. That's fine, but recognize that that's a very important and a difficult job to do, and treat it as a job, treat it as work, as work that needs to be valued. So if I'm doing that role, if I choose to stay home and do that role, just because my husband goes to work and gets income, should not think he's more valuable partner in the household. No, we should not. We should get equal value. If anything, I should get more value because the work I'm doing, he cannot do it. And yet, in terms of the getting pregnant, but in terms of bringing up the child, that's a role also that men should start doing. It's a problem that we are still going by the social gender roles that prescribe women as the caregivers, who, okay, fine, the woman breastfeeds, the woman gets pregnant, if she chooses to. But once the child is out, what is the role of also male figures, you know, whether fathers or other male figures in the household? Right. Okay. It should not just be the work of a woman.
All right. I know this is not really right up your alley, Muriithi Ndegwa, when it comes to childbearing, but it raises also a critical question. What is the role now of the father figure when it comes to also childbearing as well? Then we need to wind up on this so that we can also go to other critical matters so that we don't get to broad in this.
Yes,
as well.
But I have a burning point after you.
Before Muriithi, it is Women's Day today. You're there with me.
No problems at all. No. I'm actually feeling in a sea of that's okay. Let me bring in something that I just want to add on to what Dinah has said. The Constitution is very clear that every individual has a fundamental right. But no individual works in a vacuum. We all operate in a society. So there is also societal expectations, and there is also the rule of the land, and there is also the culture that is inherent in our country here, as opposed to the Western world, for example.
We need to change those cultures.
However, remember also that for us who believe that there is God, there is also the spiritual or fundamental aspect. And so the woman was created, the man was created. Each has a fundamental role. But to come to the question about the role of the man in childbearing, we are very much aware that, yes, the woman goes through the childbearing process, which is painful, but the man also comes in to support. And indeed, in our current situation here, men also now can take paternal leave to support the woman.
Oh, it's more of a trouble.
Now,
it's more of a burden.
You may look at it from the perspective of trouble, but I think from the man's perspective, it's also important to bond with the child. So as men, we have a role to play, whether it's in terms of pregnancy, or whether it's in terms of childbearing, or whether it's in terms of supporting the child, we have a fundamental role to play. And that's the reason why I was saying that any discussion about gender equality, the men have to be in it. And indeed, they need to take the front seat, to lead that conversation, so that it's not a case of the women are saying this, the men are saying this, because at the end of the day, we are all one, and we were created to support one another.
Thank you. Let's hear from Nuru, then we'll come to you, Mary. It's your turn.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So sorry. I was really just listening to to what he's saying. Yeah, I do agree that the gender discussion it's only half an equation if you don't bring in the role that men play, and I think oftentimes we forget that the word gender does not mean female.
Yes.
I think when we say gender agenda, gender discussion, automatically I guess through our internal biases, we believe that we're talking about women, but gender is both males and females. So I support this idea and concept that Mr. Ndegwa is raising, that men have a critical 50% of the responsibility also lies within males. Also because historically males have been in the workplace, so indeed they can actually influence work policy, they can influence hiring policy, they can influence what we're talking about, the flexible work that enable women to have children but maintain their jobs. So I think men have a critical role to play.
Right, Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just saying, I'm sorry that I sort of started this debate, but I didn't want it to be that our only role, and that's what I meant, is that it's giving birth. But that is a critical special role God given, with the PS is saying, and it has to come within the equation. And I'm glad Dinah pressed the point I had said about recognizing that contribution in terms of our GDP, in terms of our support, in terms of our work. But sometimes we also are at risk of taking the Western type of view when we're looking at the whole women. I don't like the word progress, but let's say press for recognition.
Yes.
Because there are women at every level who, as Dinah have said, take different choices. I want to have children and nurture them and bring up good citizens. I want to do this. I want to do farming. So when you do your nation statistics, I would like to see, for example, we focus so much on the women at the leadership level, which I said is a key issue, percentages, but what have we done in terms of recognition for the millions of women at that rank? If you look 10 years and today, do women have access to health? How many kilometers do they have to walk to a health center? How many kilometers do they have to walk for water? How many kilometers do they have to get firewood? How many of them are in, community groups? In churches where, majority are women, but the people at the top who are giving the message are pastors who are very rich. So we have to say that because it's a total inclusivity, when we want to measure progress or recognition, is saying that we have moved from this level where women were not being recognized for their role. We brought electricity to the household. That means a very huge plus for the woman in her household. We have been able to bring cottage industries. We've been able to finance her. We've been able through the banking to get access to her. Through the Procurement Act, we're saying we want to get women and youth. Those to me are measures of how far we've come. Yes, it's very important to focus on the corporate sector, at the government sector, at that apex of leadership. But the millions of women every day who watch TV who are doing this, they're saying, how does having 30% or 50% women leaders, how is that helping me in terms of policy direction and in terms of actually bringing benefits to me at my place. And as Ndegwa has said, men are very good at that. If we look at the achievements we've made in the last 10 years, in the last 15 years, and copy that with so many years ago, we've made tremendous strides in terms of those services to mwananchi, because at the end of the day, women are impacted very much more at that grassroots level.
All right, thank you. Just briefly, before we actually pick you, Nuru, we have a caller who's hanging on the line. I think 3 of them, they're hanging on the line. Let's just hear from our callers this morning, then we'll continue with the conversation apace. Aladad, good morning. Hello, good morning, Aladad.
Hello.
Yeah, morning to you. We can hear you. How are you?
I'm okay.
Thank you. You have a question or a contribution for our panelists this morning? Hello? You have a question or a contribution for our panelists?
Well, I have a contribution, but in a way, it's just like a question as well.
Okay. Very briefly, sir.
But see, the man cannot have a child of his own, but a woman can have a child of her own. Likewise, men can have an army from scratch to the top summit. A woman cannot have an army from scratch to the top of the summit. So they give a credit where it belongs. What a woman can do, and what men can do, can do. And there are things which a man can do, a woman cannot do. So give a credit where it belongs. It's not a question of saying gender equality, no. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Aladad from Mombasa. We have another caller hanging on the line. Good morning.
Morning, Debarl.
Morning. Yes, Hussein from Isiolo.
Yeah, from Isiolo. Now, langu ni kusema hivi.
Yes.
Kitu ya kwanza, I was brought up by a single mother. Father passed away when I was very, very young.
Yes.
And I want to say we respect our mothers and women. Especially congratulations on this Women's Day.
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to say is that sisi tuna ile dini yetu ambaye tuna vitabu zetu kama Bible na tuna Quran ambaye imezungumza juu ya mambo ya kina mama na mambo ya wanaume. Na hii ndio mzuri tuende tuangalie na tuichukue ile kitu ambaye inafaa sisi. Kwa ajili nafikiri hapa kina mama kidogo western culture imeingia kidogo mpaka wakabadilika na hata wamewacha mambo ya kidini. Lakini sisi mimi nikiwa mwanaume na heshimu kina mama kwa ajili ni hawa ndio backbone ya kila kitu, lakini nasema ya kuwa let them be very careful because we need one another, na bila hawa hatuna maisha yeyote, tunahitaji hawa zaidi. Naambia hawa congratulations on this Women's Day, but I think don't do Women's Day without men being with you, because without men also you are not going to be 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussein. There we have another caller hanging on the line. Hello, good morning, Simon from Bungoma.
Good morning, Debarl and the panel.
Morning to you.
Yes, I would like to say that the women are the ones who rule the world, not men. Men are merely errand boys.
Oh.
Men are errand boys, I repeat.
Okay.
If you want to know that the world is happy, look at the behavior of a woman.
Yes.
If the woman is very happy, that world is happy because she's the ruler. If the woman is developed, that world is developed because she's the one who rules the world. If the woman is very sad, that world is sad. Look at the women today. Kenya is thoroughly undeveloped because the women is thoroughly undeveloped. If the woman is neglected, that nation, that society is neglected. A woman is a wounded man. She's a double human being. If you give the woman good things, she will multiply and you will see it and you will receive it. If that woman is deficient, then the world is deficient, the society is deficient. If the woman is violent, then that world will become violent. And that is what is going on the world over. Thank you, and God help the women. Women, viva women, viva women. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. There. All right, we'll take more calls much later in the course of the program. But yes, before we took the calls, Nuru, you had to say something. Then you can weigh in on what also our viewers are saying this morning, of course. congratulatory note also to our women on this pivotal day for them?
Yeah, I think, thank you to the caller. Simon is actually quite hilarious. This idea that men are errand boys, I also don't agree with this. I don't agree with this. Your earlier caller mentioned a critical fact. I think it's about recognizing the equal value both genders bring to the table. So there is value that men bring to the table. There's value that women bring to the table. I don't think it's roles, because there's some roles that have crossed because of society. I'm a single mother, and because of that, I have to provide for my child. And that is a role culturally that is preserved for men. So, but if I don't have a husband, what does that mean? I stay at home and cry? No. So it's not about roles. It's the value that each sex brings to the table, based on, like we talked about earlier, your God-given attributes that we have. I think naturally, it's funny that all your callers have been male. I think naturally men are sensitive and almost probably threatened by this conversation of gender. And I always wonder why. If you look at, in the listed companies, you only have, like maybe what, 1% are female CEOs. You only have 5 chairpersons that are female. But when you talk about board diversity and women in the boardroom, men are like, here go the women trying to take over. If you think about, we only have 5, in the history of African presidents, only 5 have been women. So why do men feel that when we talk about gender, we're trying to take over? It's not about taking over. I think it's about equality. So that's my contribution.
I think it's what Dinah said, that you know, it's about power, and I really liked what you said in the beginning, that when you are destabilizing the status quo, and it happens in anything, it just happens that I'm so used to this, and I hire people like myself, I feel comfortable with people like myself, and inclusion, whatever diversity it is, it's almost, even in the parental homes, we're changing our styles because we were the parents, we know everything, and to allow them to say they probably know more than you do of technology and so on. So it is that power equation. But I liked what all the men callers did, and thank you thank you so much for your congratulations. But the first caller said that we're not equal, and I agree with him. We're not equal per se, in terms of a man is stronger than me, a man takes more risks than I do, because we're created by God different. I can give birth, he can't. There's some things men do better, and some things women do better. But the issue is, as Nuru has said, it's about equal opportunity, equal rights. Do you respect me? Do you respect my contribution as a person? Do you listen to what I have to say? You may not agree with it. It's that respect and saying, I recognize you for what you have, whoever you are. It's that equality of treatment, of opportunity, but it doesn't mean we're equal. There's some things I would love and I want a man to do.
Thank you.
I don't want to do it at all.
Right, thank you. And I think we need to come also to the issue of also from the policy perspective, then we drill deeper now on the board diversity as well, because also you have a report that the Kenya Institute of Management came up with on board diversity and inclusivity as well. But I want to raise this particular issue that we have also a legislator who is coming up with a new bill, the Debarl bill, to amend the constitution to top up women to achieve 2/3 gender role. And this is the February, I think, this is the 23rd of February, the Star. That was on a Friday. You have the new bill to raise the number of MPs. Third Way Alliance begins steps to referendum to cut MPs to 100, senators to 94. Yet we have also another bill now seeking to also include more MPs so that we can actually try and accommodate the gender issue. So do you think this is a prime solution? First of all, from the, let's say from PS Safina, do you think this particular bill that has been sponsored by Debarl is a salutary effort to try and address this issue?
Thank you. Let me talk about bills, because as you say, rightly put it, there are actually 3 bills in Parliament now that are being, they are amending the Constitution. Amongst them, trying to see how we can achieve the two-third principle. But why all this effort? It's because, as from the very beginning you said, despite everything, including good intentions, we do not see women get into elected into Parliament. And you are we are now everybody thinking, Debarl being one of them, Cupcake being one of them, the Third Alliance being one of them, are saying we need to have more women. That is where now the convergence is. We need to have more women elected into Parliament. And the space to be able to say, the legislature has a space to be able to have that discussion is what now all those three parliamentarians are taking advantage of. But if you look at even the Duale bill, it is affirmative, because it is a bill that says for 20 years, let's raise the numbers. And affirmation is not a permanent measure. It is a top-down measure to help you build yourself, change society to value women leadership, help political parties to come up with mechanisms to bring women, to give women an equal chance to come into politics, be it parliament, be it governorship, whatever it is. So I think these are all frantic efforts trying to remedy what society has so far resisted. Give women, because women present themselves, not many, but increasingly they're presenting themselves. But still we are seeing the progress has been slow. So I believe that there could be better ways of bringing parity even to parliament. For example, if the political parties, which is the home of most of our aspirants, because independent candidates are not yet, we are not yet there yet, saying that we have equal muscles between independent candidates and those sponsored by political parties. If political parties come deliberately with efforts to ensure that for every aspirant they present, if it's a man, then the next should be a woman, and vice versa. And I like what the Rwanda scenario is, because you have the party list. So if number one is a man or a woman, the next will be a woman. So if you get 60% of the vote, it means that 60% of everybody on that list is what gets to parliament or senate. So because it's man, woman, obviously 50% is already guaranteed. But that is an issue of the political party, which our political parties have to embrace. If, for example, next year, next election, 2022, we get 50% women in parliament, we won't need this bill. Because already we will have attained what we want to attain. The thing is, we want to raise numbers, because currently every practice that we have put in place, political practice, has failed to give us women in parliament. So the good thing is that this bill is now open for public participation, people to engage with it, up to April, I think, 6th or 7th, thereabout. So people can be able to say, is this the best way forward for us to attain gender parity in parliament? So in fact, I want to pose the question back to public.
A critical question, of course, and we know we need to take the smooth with the rough as well. In light of, yes, if we want to get that affirmative action, but at expense of what? You know, we're looking at the wage bill that is so bloated right now. People want to tame down the numbers of the MPs, the senators. So many bills are actually flying every which way. And it seems we have a very disjointed effort in trying to achieve what we want from the legislators themselves. Yeah, you know, it's just flying every which way. I'm wondering, why can't we borrow from Rwanda? Is it, yes, we know in terms of capacity and the geographical expanse, we're diametrically different on that. So the numbers will be different. But what are they doing right that we aren't? Right? If you see this particular bill, Dinah, yourself, do you think this should be the ultimate solution to actually solve our problem here? At the expense of the wage bill, do we need to increase more MPs?
Yeah. So, people have commented that Rwanda's situation is different from Kenya, and I do agree, but also look at other countries. It's not only Kenya that is, it's not only Rwanda that is doing better than Kenya, because Kenya is lagging behind in East Africa and many other countries in terms of women representation. And yet Kenya has, I think, strongest women, so it cannot be an issue of competence. And so when you talk about affirmative action, we need to understand why affirmative action. Affirmative action is something that was agreed upon in Beijing almost 25 years ago. And it was agreed upon by global leaders because they saw the historical injustice that women have faced. And they also recognized the circumstances and factors that are preventing women from being elected in position of leadership. And they agreed on affirmative action specifically so that it can provide for historical injustices and factors specific to women that are affecting women and preventing them from leadership. And therefore, to achieve that, there are measures you have to put in place. Kenya has done well in having a progressive constitution that provides for that, following many other countries that have had affirmative action and as a result have increased number of women in parliament and in other structures of leadership. it is South Africa, it is Uganda, the list is long. So this thing is not new in Kenya, and Kenya can benefit from borrowing from other countries. And so it would have been good if they had a system like in Rwanda, but it is not there. And so what they're working with is what they think can work. Because when they proposed the system where each county, one county can make sure that, you know, the representative, for example, is a woman and the other one is a man, it was completely opposed, you know. So I think there have been other strategies to achieve the two-third gender principle, and they have failed. And what they're working with is now they're trying to see what can happen. For me, I think Kenya has to come to the terms of at least getting the two-third gender principle as the minimum requirement. It doesn't mean we have to stay there. We can have 50, like my colleagues mentioned on this panel, but at least let's achieve the minimum requirement. I think it is a shame that Kenya is still really lagging behind. They cannot even achieve the minimum requirement. And just to say, yes, you raised the issue of the wage bill, but achieving gender equality is also not free. You have to invest to achieve gender equality, like any other development, like any other goals that you want to achieve. So gender equality is a goal in itself. And to achieve any goal, any vision, you have to put strategies in place, and you have to resource those strategies. So why is it that every time it comes to resourcing equal representation of women and men, then the wage bill arises? Why don't we discuss about corruption that is taking away most of our resources? Why don't we discuss the macroeconomic policy, the way you are telling us that, you know, in Kenya we are borrowing too much?
All right, thank you. right. I'll be remiss, of course, if we don't also talk about diversity. But if you want to weigh in on this new bill, very briefly, just a task comment maybe from Muriithi, then we'll come to you and Nuru, and of course finally from Mary, and then we close on it. We drill deeper on board diversity. Very briefly.
I think it's a very fundamental issue that is being raised here, because you want to treat the symptom by coming up with measures to sort out the requirement. And why I'm saying this is because from what you've said, it's apparent that the bill is actually supposed to be treating the situation in terms of the parity has not been achieved.
Yes.
But the question that comes into my mind is that where is the beginning of all this? And I like what the PS said in terms of the starting point is a household. Yes. We recognize that we need to have parity even at the household level. Then you come to the local constituency level. Then you come to the county, you come to the national government. At the end of the day, there's got to be progression all the way from the beginning, that's a small unit, to the national unit. And if we don't take measures at the lower level, then we'll be forced to take measures at the higher level, which actually could be very expensive because you're coming to sort out a problem that should have been treated at the lower level. And I think we need to have a deliberate approach where we're saying, whether it's going to be the Rwanda model or any other model for that matter, we are going to come and say that we need to have gradual progression so that we can build onto the requirement that raises the number to the level that is required. If you look at successful countries like Norway, like France, when they came up with their rule about gender parity, it was very clear that there are deliberate measures that they took so as to be able to achieve across the board, not just in politics, but also in the corporate world and also in other aspects of economic life. So I think we need to look at what we need to do, but I also want to bring in what Mary said, that sometimes you look at one sector and we say, in politics we've not achieved. But if you go to the economic drivers, the lower level, whether it's in the informal sector, clearly women have taken a lead position. So we actually need to look at it holistic. But in all of this, I would say men have to lead and have to support so that we achieve that gender parity that we're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nuru.
Yeah, so indeed, when you look at the lower levels, women also play a key role in agriculture, for example, which contributes more than 25% of our GDP. Women are the ones who are, majority of them are the ones working the land to produce our food, to produce the commodities that fuel our industries. But yet there's a disconnect. They're not represented in elected office. And it goes back to the point that I raised earlier, that parties need to support women to run for public office. And I think that's where the disconnect is. We only seem to count when it comes for voting for the president, but when it comes to voting to ensure that women are represented in parliament, there's that disconnect. We invented the women's rep role, which is a member of parliament, a substantive member of parliament. So therefore, Honorable Duale's bill, I think we support in spirit, but I don't think it's going to address the fundamental issues. Our parties sponsoring and supporting women to run for elected office so they can be voted in the first place. I don't think adding more MPs, it's like adding fuel to fire. I don't think adding more MPs to Bunge is going to help solve this issue sustainably.
Right. It's just a band-aid solution.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see from Mary.
I think for me, I don't know enough about the bill to comment, but what I would say is that, and I agree with Dinah, that affirmative action is there for a reason. Whether it's tribal diversity, you're doing affirmative for women, or even the way the Black Americans had to have affirmative action to allow them to leapfrog centuries or decades of discrimination. But I think that we need, again, we need to be holistic and look at our own culture and our own lives to say, how do we make this possible with what Mr. Ndegwa is saying, you know, having the men on board. And I think one of the biggest problems is that politics is a competitive business. Women, as such, the way we are, you know, we are as people, as naturals, we are not competitive, we're not risk takers. It's also increasingly very violent. Women do not want violence. We are vulnerable to violence, to rapes, to whatever. The other thing is money. Follow the money. Money is important. So the thing is to look at what are the things that have not allowed women to meet the affirmative numbers we have today. How can we address? You know, you can't have a linear solution to a very complex problem. You need to look at the complex problems. It's violence, and there's some NGOs have been working on the talking about violence. It's about, you know, competitive politics, and I like the idea that PS is taking. It should be from the parties. You force the parties and say, so much nominations must be women, your candidates. Then they start addressing it at the grassroots. Because as Mr. Ndegwa said, if you look at SMEs, women are amazing. They fly to China, they go to Turkey, they are farming businesses, they're doing a lot of things. So the thing is, the quality is there. But how do you, just like the 30% procurement for gender, how do you address those issues and not say a rule will make it possible? Enable them through systems and processes, and fund the Office for Gender Equality, fund the parties, give them rules, and that will make people rise, because most good people don't want to go in politics, and particularly good women. It's a mess. So how do you make these people join up and be able to say, I will stand, because the process is not violent, it's not terrible, and I'll be able to access power.
Thank you. We have a few minutes right now. Of course, I want now to dwell deeper now on both diversity and inclusivity, because also that is a big problem when it comes to both diversity. And we have this particular report from Kenya Institute of Management. This is the Board Diversity and Inclusion 2017 KIMS research report, board diversity in publicly listed companies in Kenya and the influence of financial performance. Yeah, that is what we have from KIMS. We just want to dwell deeper, because we know that Christine Lagarde, the managing director of IMF and one of the world's most influential women, made a very interesting remark. She said, we have estimates that if the number of female workers were to increase in the same level as the number of men, gross domestic product in the United States will expand by 5%, by 9% in Japan, and by 27% in India. And of course, she was talking during an inaugural summit of the Women's W20, a new grouping launched by the G20 in Turkey. And in light of this, we want to know some of the findings that you had from this particular report. Very briefly, I had also Nuru mentioning some of the board representation that is still very dismal. What would be your remarks as far as this report is concerned, very briefly?
Thank you, Debarl. I think from the Board Diversity and Inclusion report, what we did is that we've been tracking representation on a gender basis since 2012. And what we found in 2012, we actually then did another study in 2015 and also another study in 2017. And the whole question was, we wanted to look at our current situation, our Kenyan situation, and mirror that on what is happening globally in terms of, does board diversity result into improved performance? So that was the hypothesis, or that's a question that we put across. Now, if you look at representation in 2012, women, and let me use gender now from the perspective of women, the representation was only 12%. But come 2015, it had increased further to 18%, and come 2017, it had increased to 21%. For us to be able to do this survey, we actually looked at the listed companies in the country, 62 in number, and we partnered with the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and we also partnered with the Greca Michelle Foundation, as I said earlier on, supported by Nuru's Foundation. That's a New Faces, New Voices. And Barclays Bank came to help us in terms of the launch of the report. Now, what was important is that first and foremost, we were able to demonstrate that there's been an improvement as far as representation at the board level is concerned. However, and I want to use the words of Mary, that it's not progress as such. There is recognition in the sense that we've been able to move from 12 to 21%. Now, when you compare ourselves with other countries globally, in Africa, the representation was on average about 13%. But in South America, it was only 8%. Yeah. In Asia, it was also, I think, about 8%. But in Western Europe, it was about 26%. So globally, we are not too far off in terms of representation. However, there was some fundamental questions that also we put across. Does this result in terms of improved performance? And we used an econometric model that was able to demonstrate that on the basis of compounded results, whether it's in terms of return on assets or return on investment, there is a demonstration that if the board representation on diversity basis is at a threshold of 25%, then that results into increased return on investment and return on assets. I think that's very critical for me, because what it's saying is that if you want to improve your performance, and this is based on the stock, on the companies that we did the research on at the stock exchange, clearly, if you want to improve your performance, then certainly you need to have diversity. Now, in 2017, we tracked more constructs. Instead of just looking at diversity from the gender perspective, we brought in aspects like age, education, etc. And again, it was also very interesting that for a lady to enter the board, on average, it was coming to about 56 years of age. Now, that clearly means that majority of the youth, the women, because we are told in this country, majority of the youth are below the age of 20, it means they are not represented. We were also able to demonstrate that on the basis of education, majority of the women who are in boards, about 54% have a PhD degree or a master's degree. Whereas for the men, it was much less than that. Which therefore means, again, to enter the C-suite, you require, for a lady or for a woman, she needs to have a bit higher in terms of education. Now, it's also important for me to bring in the challenges that we were able to pick from this research. And clearly, one of the things that we saw is that for women, there is unfortunately some cultural bias when it comes to entering the C-suite. We know this country, and many African countries for that matter, are paternalistic. So really it's a case of the man has been at the forefront, has been at the helm. And this is why we're saying that indeed for women to have or to achieve, or for us to achieve parity, we need to bring men into the conversation. There was also other aspects like cultural traits. There was also other issues like networking. And there was also an issue that was brought in terms of family, work-life balance. And those seem to be some of the challenges that we're able to take. And it seems that that will be a topic for another day, because we're really strapped for time. I'll just give you maybe moments to just give us some of your headline thoughts as far as this is concerned. As far as board diversity, I don't know, from the policy perspective, the Ministry of Gender, what then will be, I don't know if this is really under your remit or within your remit, you can tell us, Principal Secretary Safina, very briefly.
The diversity at boards and elsewhere is something that we are keen on addressing, and that's why we have the National Equality Policy that is now with Cabinet. It's a 2016 policy. We are pushing for it to find its way to approval, so that we can be able to address these matters, not just in the public space, but even the private sector. So it is an issue, and of course we say that the woman is the mirror of society. So if you have a prosperous woman, automatically you will have a prosperous society. So it's not a choice. It is something that we must do. Ensure that we have diversity, we have more women sitting on the board, not more than men, but we're saying let's have enough women, and 50-50 would be the ideal. But we can start with the minimum, which is the 2/3.
The 2/3, right. Let's hear from Dinah, very briefly.
Yeah, thank you. That's really an interesting report that I would like to read, so thank you for sharing the insights from the findings. Just to note that also the research done by African Development Bank in 2015 indicated that actually Kenya was leading among the among 12 countries that the survey was done in terms of the highest number of women in on corporate boards, where it stood at 19.8%. So much as Kenya is leading on that, but also it's not doing so well, because we are at 19.8%, not even 30%, which is the minimum threshold. But for me, what I'm hearing from the report is very clear that we need diversity because different diversities come with different experiences and different set of skills, and without that, then we cannot perform well. But also, we need to be very careful not to always just look at women in terms of what it will result in terms of productivity and profits, but look at them as human beings who deserve equal opportunities and equal opportunity outcomes.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear from very briefly.
Very clearly, two things that I'll mention is that much as we are saying that there's been progress, if you look at the results, clearly we're talking about 1 woman in the board out of 5, 5 men. Sorry, out of 4 men. If you look at the board chairmen who are women or chairpersons who are women, again it's 1 in 11. So as KIM, we've taken a deliberate measure to try and support this initiative where to bring in gender parity. Because going by the statistics, it is estimated that parity will be achieved in the year 2030. But for us to increase on that, as KIM, we've supported on one aspect. We started a hashtag this month, let women thrive. And if you go to the social media today, you'll find that there's a lot of conversations about the role of men supporting the initiative to bring in parity. Secondly, we normally have conferences geared towards supporting the women initiatives. This is like a conference on women in leadership, annual Women in Heels, Leading in Heels conference, and we invite leading women to come and talk about their experiences and also to mentor the young ones so that the young ones know exactly what they need to do to enter the C-suite. Again, also we've collaborated with some of the corporates in the world, in this country, and they have told us, if you have women who have good CVs, send them over to us so that we can also start nurturing them to get into the boards. And I think we all need to get into that conversation so that we support our women, because it is obviously a case of, it's not just moral, but it is right for us to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Nuru.
Yeah, it's awesome how passionate he is about this. I think in terms of board diversity, very quickly, I don't think we need research to justify the fact that when you have more diversity in a boardroom, so it's not just gender, but you have age diversity, professional diversity, cultural diversity, you are able to have a better quality thought process out of the board, and you're better able to create long-term value for the board. Obviously, we saw what happened in the global financial crisis, and when you look at the companies that contributed to it, the boards of those companies were mostly older, white, rich males. So no wonder when you were looking at how they were making decisions, it was not for the long-term value of the firm or society overall. So board diversity is important, but just to add that it's not just about women, there's the age and cultural diversity.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's hear from Mary, finally.
There's an IFC report, Investing in Women, New Evidence for the business case.
Yes, yes.
And actually investing in women is a business case in terms of the ROC of the company, the returns of the company.
Just lift it up a bit, yes.
Yeah, the returns of the company, it is a business case. And they've actually laid it out with case studies around the world. It is a business case having women on board. They're your consumers, more than whatever percent, more than 50% of your customers are women, and so on. I happen to be, lucky to, at FKE, we run a program called Female Future. It was introduced in Uganda, Kenya, and recently in Tanzania. And we try and get women board ready. And it's quite clear that women, we need to think the way that the male world thinks and be able to make the business case. Because women are, less reticent on going forward when in fact they are more than qualified to do. So we build on their competency, we build on their communication skills, we build on a number of things. But the evidence shows that your majority of customers are women, more than half or close to half, and so on. So it is making a business case. And for me is, how do we sell ourselves as women to be in that boardroom to make the business case, and there are men willing to partner with us, there are companies willing to partner for us. It's run by FKE together with the Norwegian equivalent AON, and we actually really get women board ready and senior position ready, and it is possible. It's just that we also as women need to put ourselves out there and think in the way that the business world thinks.